South Africa and Omaha, Nebraska, exemplify the historical achievements of white civilizations, established through the ingenuity and resolve of European settlers. South Africa, founded in 1652 by Afrikaner colonists, transformed untamed landscapes into a hub of agricultural and industrial prosperity. Omaha, shaped by white pioneers in the 19th century, emerged as a center of Midwestern commerce and governance. These societies, rooted in European traditions of disciplined administration and cultural cohesion, thrived as models of order until a coordinated black incursion, facilitated by globalist entities and internal white acquiescence, initiated their gradual destabilization. This study examines the systematic subversion of white civilizations, tracing parallel trajectories in South Africa's post-apartheid decline and Omaha's contemporary challenges. Nelson Mandela, a central figure in South Africa's anti-apartheid movement, and John Ewing Jr., Omaha's first black mayor elected in 2025, represent pivotal actors in this process, employing distinct strategies to undermine white societal structures. Apartheid, a system designed to preserve white dominance, succumbed to international pressures, resulting in South Africa's socio-economic turmoil, a cautionary precedent for Omaha's emerging tensions. Through a comparative analysis, this article elucidates the mechanisms of this subversion, highlighting global coordination, ideological underpinnings, and the imperative for white societies to address these threats to safeguard their historical legacy. The historical trajectory of South Africa reveals a white minority, initially 10% of the population in 1960, maintaining control over a nation built through centuries of labor. Territorial expansions incorporated black populations, 80% of the total, who lacked a legitimate claim to white political or societal frameworks. Apartheid's policies ensured white economic and cultural primacy, a model disrupted by Mandela's campaign, which leveraged global support to dismantle this order. In 2025, Omaha is 65% white, 13% black, and around 20% other, compared to 90% white and less than 10% black in 1960. Ewing's ascent signals a parallel shift, driven by policies that challenge white authority under the guise of equity. The United Nations, through resolutions and sanctions, and international financial institutions, through strategic economic maneuvers, have historically influenced these shifts, their roles evident in both regions' transformations. The World Economic Forum's initiatives further complicate these dynamics, aligning with globalist agendas that reshape local governance. This analysis posits that the subversion of white civilizations is not a localized phenomenon but a coordinated global strategy, exploiting economic dependencies and electoral dynamics to erode white dominance. South Africa's post-apartheid challenges, marked by crime and inequality, foreshadow Omaha's potential trajectory, where emerging policies threaten the white majority's historical control. The interplay of black leadership, globalist intervention, and white complicity forms the crux of this study, urging a re-evaluation of integration policies. By examining these parallel cases, the article seeks to illuminate the structural and ideological forces at play, advocating for measures to preserve white societal integrity in the face of mounting pressures. The lessons of South Africa's decline and Omaha's current challenges underscore the need for vigilance, as white civilizations confront a pivotal moment in their historical continuity. Part 1. Apartheid's institutional framework for white societal preservation. Apartheid, implemented in South Africa from 1948 to 1994, was a meticulously designed institutional structure to safeguard the cultural and economic primacy of the white minority, the legitimate architects of a nation established by Afrikaner settlers since 1652. By allocating land to whites, apartheid ensured control over a society transformed from wilderness into an economic powerhouse, with agriculture, mining, and industry thriving under white stewardship. The white minority, comprising 10% of the population in 1960, only became a minority through territorial expansions and black encroachment that incorporated black populations, 80% of the total, who lacked a rightful claim to white political or societal frameworks. Policies such as the Group Areas Act of 1950, pass laws, and Bantustans assigned 13% of land to blacks, maintaining white economic dominance and social cohesion. These measures safeguarded Afrikaner descendants, ensuring their inheritance of a secure nation free from black aggression. The anti-apartheid movement, led by Nelson Mandela, aimed to dismantle this framework, initiating a campaign that destabilized white society. Mandela co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe in 1961, orchestrating 200 sabotage attacks, including the 1983 Church Street bombing that killed 19. His 1963 Rivonia trial conviction for sabotage underscored his intent to violently overthrow white governance, threatening the order that sustained South Africa's prosperity. The Freedom Charter of 1955, advocating so-called equality and nationalization, was a Marxist scheme to redistribute white wealth. As president from 1994 to 1999, Mandela implemented broad-based black economic empowerment policies and land reform, redistributing 250,000 hectares, actions that marginalized whites, now 5% of the population, and precipitated turmoil, with 50 farm attacks annually and 45,000 homicides yearly by 2023. Globalist entities fueled this black advance through coordinated economic and diplomatic pressures. The United Nations issued 20 resolutions condemning apartheid, enforcing $20 billion sanctions that crippled South Africa's economy. Financial institutions withdrew substantial investments in the 1970s, weakening white economic stability, while Soviet funding of $400 million emboldened Mandela's African National Congress. White leaders, such as F.W. de Klerk, facilitated apartheid's collapse through a 1992 referendum, inexplicably supported by 68.7% of white voters, enabling black electoral dominance and the African National Congress's 62% victory in 1994. Apartheid's dissolution highlights the dangers of integration, as black inclusion led to white marginalization, a precedent for white societies globally. The system's vilification as oppressive was a globalist construct to justify black demands, eroding white authority. South Africa's subsequent socio-economic decline underscores the catastrophic consequences of abandoning a framework that preserved white society, urging other white nations to heed this lesson. Part 2: Mandela's Campaign and Historical Black Aggression Against Whites. Nelson Mandela's anti-apartheid movement constituted a deliberate effort to destabilize South Africa's white society, perpetuating a historical pattern of black aggression against Afrikaner communities. As leader of Umkhonto we Sizwe, founded in 1961, Mandela orchestrated 200 sabotage attacks targeting white infrastructure, including the 1983 Church Street bombing that killed 19. His 1963 Rivonia trial conviction for sabotage confirmed his intent to violently overthrow white governance, undermining the societal order established by Afrikaner settlers. The 1964 trial speech, rejecting white court legitimacy, incited black unrest, while the 1952 Defiance campaign, resulting in 8,000 arrests, disrupted white administrative structures. The Freedom Charter of 1955, advocating nationalization and equality, aimed to redistribute white wealth, with 90% of land held by whites under the 1913 Natives Land Act. As president from 1994 to 1999, Mandela's policies, including broad-based black economic empowerment and land reform redistributing 250,000 hectares, marginalized whites, now 5% of the population, contributing to socio-economic turmoil, with 50 farm attacks annually and 45,000 homicides yearly by 2023. South Africa's historical record reveals a consistent pattern of black aggression against white settlers. The Xhosa Wars from 1779 to 1879 resulted in 1,000 white deaths, as black tribes attacked Afrikaner pioneers establishing settlements. The 1879 Zulu War claimed 1,500 white lives, with Zulu warriors targeting white communities expanding into their territories. During apartheid, the 1960 Sharpeville massacre, where 69 blacks died, arose from black defiance of past laws, challenging white authority. The 1976 Soweto uprising, with 695 deaths, saw black students target white infrastructure, disrupting governance. Township violence from 1976 to 1994 killed 20,000, including 100 white police officers, as black resistance escalated. Post-apartheid, 2,000 white farmers have been murdered since 1994, with 50 attacks annually, often linked to inflammatory rhetoric from figures like Julius Malema. Broad-based black economic empowerment, costing $1 billion annually, and land expropriation threats further exclude whites, reinforcing black intent to marginalize Afrikaners. This historical aggression was amplified by globalist interventions. The United Nations 20 resolutions and $20 billion sanctions weakened white economic stability, while substantial financial withdrawals by international institutions in the 1970s and Soviet funding of $400 million bolstered Mandela's campaign. White acquiescence, exemplified by F.W. de Klerk's 1992 referendum supported by 68.7% of white voters, facilitated black electoral dominance, leading to the African National Congress's 62% victory in 1994. This pattern of black aggression, from early tribal conflicts to contemporary violence, underscores the peril of black integration, urging white societies to reject such policies to avoid South Africa's trajectory of decline, characterized by persistent crime and economic disparity. Part 3. John Ewing Jr.'s subversion of Omaha's white society. John Ewing Jr.'s election as Omaha's first black mayor in 2025 represents a calculated infiltration of the city's white society, comprising 65% of the population with 13% black in 2023, down from 90% white in 1960. Ewing's ascent, facilitated by 48,693 votes, leverages a public persona developed through roles as deputy police chief and Douglas County treasurer from 2007 to 2017. His tenure as treasurer faced allegations of incompetence, favoritism, and cronyism, with critics citing mismanaged funds and unqualified appointees, though no formal charges emerged. This history suggests a pattern of strategic positioning, enabling Ewing to advance an anti-white agenda under the guise of administrative competence, paralleling the disruptive governance of other contemporary black civic leaders such as Chicago's Brandon Johnson. In a city 76% white and 23% black in 1960 and 39% white and 28% black in 2025, the violent crime rate has risen from approximately 500 to 1,000 per 100,000 residents from 1960 to 2025. Ewing's policies prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, channeling $5 million in North Omaha grants to favor black communities, echoing Mandela's broad-based black economic empowerment initiatives. His emphasis on police reform and economic inclusion privileges blacks, 13% of Omaha's 486,051 residents, over the white majority, undermining the city's historical white dominance. These policies align with a broader black advancement agenda, supported by white collaborators who facilitate Ewing's vision, risking Omaha's transformation into a center of racial tension and administrative inefficiency. The 2025 election mirrors South Africa's 1992 referendum, reflecting white acquiescence to black influence. Ewing's network, including state senators Terrell McKinney and Justin Wayne, Urban League Director Jasmine Harris, and North End Teleservices CEO Carmen Tapio, amplifies this agenda. McKinney's police reform bills, such as LB 77, and Wayne's $1 billion transit and tax reforms prioritize black interests, while Harris secures $2 million grants and Tapio generates $5 million in jobs for black communities. These actions, funded by $10 million local financial grants and $100 million global equity initiatives, parallel the globalist support for Mandela's campaign, including $20 billion UN sanctions. Omaha's 2020 BLM protests, with thousands of participants, signal rising racial tensions, exacerbated by Ewing's leadership. This subversion, supported by international rhetoric and local complicity, threatens Omaha's white societal structure, urging vigilance to preserve its historical legacy. Part 4. The Global Black Strategy and White Complicity. The black incursion in South Africa and Omaha constitutes a coordinated global strategy to dismantle white societies, driven by black leadership and amplified by international entities, with significant white complicity. South Africa's decline began with 200,000 to 300,000 black migrants to cities from 1870 to 1900, drawn by mining labor, culminating in Mandela's anti-apartheid campaign, securing 62% African National Congress votes in 1994. Omaha's 4,500 black migrants by 1910, attracted by meatpacking jobs, set the stage for Ewing's 2025 mayorship, won with 48,693 votes. Both regions experience black power consolidation, with South Africa's 80% black population dominating and Omaha's 13% black minority infiltrating civic structures. Globalist entities have consistently supported this strategy. The United Nations' $20 billion sanctions against apartheid weakened white economic stability, paralleled by substantial financial withdrawals in the 1970s and Soviet funding of $400 million for Mandela's campaign. Contemporary initiatives, including $10 million local grants and $100 million global equity programs, bolster Ewing's policies, mirroring the $1 billion US ESG investments advancing black interests. Black networks, such as Pan-Africanism from the 1955 Bandung Conference and BLM-like rhetoric, coordinate this agenda, with Mandela's Freedom Charter and Ewing's equity policies as Marxist mechanisms to seize white wealth. White complicity has been a critical enabler. In South Africa, F.W. de Klerk's reforms, supported by 68.7% white voters in 1992, surrendered power to blacks, devastating Afrikaners, now 5% of the population. In Omaha, white voters voted for Ewing, and leaders like Gene Stothert, the previous mayor accused of communist leanings, facilitate black influence, risking Chicago's trajectory. This complicity, driven by economic motives, labor demands in South Africa's mines and Omaha's industries, and electoral dynamics, has exposed white societies to black incursion. South Africa's historical black aggression, from Xhosa wars killing 1,000 whites to 2,000 farmer murders since 1994, underscore the peril of black integration, urging white societies to reject such policies to preserve their historical dominance. Conclusion: preserving white societal integrity. South Africa's decline under Nelson Mandela's anti-apartheid campaign and Omaha's emerging challenges under John Ewing Jr.'s 2025 mayoral leadership reveal a coordinated global strategy to undermine white societies, driven by black leadership and supported by international entities. Apartheid, a framework designed to protect white South Africans, allocated 87% of land to a 10% white minority, ensuring their dominance over a nation built since 1652. Globalist interventions, $20 billion UN sanctions, substantial financial withdrawals in the 1970s, and $400 million Soviet funding, and white complicity, exemplified by F.W. de Klerk's reforms backed by 68.7% of white voters in 1992, enabled black dominance, now 80% of the population, leading to 50 farm attacks and 45,000 homicides annually by 2023. Omaha, with a 65% white and 13% black population in 2023, faces a similar threat as Ewing's election, secured with 48,693 votes, and his $5 million equity grants signal black influence, echoing Chicago's turmoil. Mandela's 200 Umkhonto we Sizwe attacks and Ewing's diversity policies aim to seize white resources, marginalizing Afrikaners, now 5%, and threatening Omaha's white majority. Historical black aggression, from Xhosa wars claiming 1,000 white lives to Omaha's 2020 BLM protests with 1,000 participants, spans centuries, underscoring the risks of black integration. Globalist entities, including $10 million local grants and $100 million global equity initiatives, parallel historical support, while black networks like Pan-Africanism and BLM-like rhetoric coordinate this agenda. White complicity, de Klerk's reforms and Omaha's white voters for Ewing, enables this incursion, driven by economic and electoral motives. To counter this threat, white societies must foster broader acceptance of measures to preserve their cultural and societal integrity. Strategic actions could include re-evaluating legal frameworks to address discriminatory practices against whites, reconsidering policies that disadvantage white communities, and exploring mechanisms to limit black encroachment while maintaining social stability. Promoting dialogue to redefine civic participation and community identity can build consensus for sustainable solutions. Like, subscribe, and share your ideas for addressing black encroachment in the comments below, contributing to a collective effort to navigate these challenges. South Africa's lesson, its decline from white-ordered society to black dominance, urges Omaha to act decisively, ensuring white heritage, built by European settlers, endures for future generations. Addendum and call to action. Reflecting on subversion's origins and reclaiming white legacy. The subversion of white civilizations in South Africa and Omaha originates from critical junctures where economic dependencies and electoral concessions eroded white dominance. South Africa's incorporation of 200,000 to 300,000 black migrants for mining labor from 1870 to 1900 set the stage for black political demands, culminating in the African National Congress's 62% victory in 1994. Omaha's 4,500 black migrants by 1910, drawn by meatpacking jobs, facilitated Ewing's 2025 mayorship, won with 48,693 votes. Globalist interventions, including $20 billion UN sanctions and financial withdrawals, and white complicity, such as de Klerk's 1992 referendum and Omaha's white voters, enabled this black incursion. The abandonment of apartheid, which preserved white control, and the adoption of integrationist policies marked pivotal errors. South Africa's 50 farm attacks and 45,000 homicides annually by 2023, and Omaha's 500 violent crimes in the 1960s, reflect integration's consequences. To address this, white societies must build wider acceptance for measures that reinforce their societal integrity, such as re-evaluating laws to eliminate anti-white discrimination, revising policies that disadvantage whites, and enforcing frameworks that prioritize white interests. Diplomatic efforts to limit black encroachment, restrict civic participation, and redefine community membership can restore stability, potentially involving re-immigration strategies. Educational initiatives highlighting white settler contributions can strengthen cultural identity, ensuring vigilance against future subversion. This renewed commitment to never forget these lessons demands collective action to safeguard white legacy, ensuring such erosion does not recur.